Welcome to Lesson 2 in My Size Unit 24, What's Consistent About Matter. In this lesson, students will answer the question, what are the properties of matter? Students will discover that scientists use properties to describe and identify matter. In the Engage portion of this lesson, you will need the States of Matter cards found in the previous lesson. You'll have students describe the matter cards. Use the card with the soda and ice cubes as an example. You'll ask students what senses can we use to help us describe this. So they might say that the soda is dark, or the glass might feel cold, thinking about their sense of touch. Pass out the sets of cards and have students use adjectives to describe the photos on each of the cards. At the end of the conversation, you'll have students choose a card and describe the item on the card. In their student journal, on the page labeled Rubber versus Glass, you'll have students fill out the Engage portion, describing what words they can use to describe that matter that they see in the card they chose. Bring the class whole group and ask them, how can scientists observe and describe matter? Take this time to remind students that observations include anything that can be noticed about something using the 5 senses. You're going to read the book Rubber versus Glass aloud to the class. As you read the book, students should use the chart on the Rubber versus Glass handout found in their student journal to record the differences and similarities between rubber and glass. Use the Read-Aloud guide found in the teacher pages to allow you to prompt students for questions about the different properties of rubber versus glass while you're reading the book. In the Explore portion of this lesson, students will test the properties of a small rubber ball, penny, magnetite, Tums, sugar cube, and a paperclip, using the materials shown in this image. On their student journal page, Properties of Matter chart, students will record the different properties of the materials they are exploring. They'll record the color and texture, whether or not the object is magnetic. So for that magnetite, it is magnetic, but it might not be very obvious. So make sure students take an extra second to feel that magnetic force between the magnet and the magnetite. They'll test for the solubility, whether or not the object dissolves in water, the conductivity, whether or not the object will light up a light bulb when placed in a circuit, meaning it conducts electricity, and the hardness of the material. When testing the conductivity, be sure to review the tutorials found in the curriculum. This can be a somewhat complicated setup, so you want to make sure that you have multiple students in each group so they can help figure out whether or not materials are conductive or not. In the Explain portion of this lesson, you'll debrief the differences between glass and rubber. You'll go over the idea that a property is an observable or measurable characteristics of matter that can be used to distinguish one substance of matter from another. Work as a class to define and describe how you would test different properties of matter. They should record their ideas in their student journal. Students will then read an article about the different properties of matter and watch several videos to reinforce these ideas. In the Elaborate portion of this lesson, you'll discuss with students how they can not only observe properties of matter, but they can actually measure properties of matter. Students will use the magnet, the penny, the paperclip, and the sugar cube to measure different properties. They can use a ruler to measure the length, a scale to measure the mass, and then either a graduated cylinder to use water displacement to measure volume, or they can calculate volume using their math. Once students have collected the data, have them analyze their data to figure out which object has the greatest volume and which object has the greatest mass. In the teacher pages, you'll find some suggestions on what students can measure. For example, for the penny, they can measure the length of the diameter instead of measuring the height of the penny, which would be difficult for them to determine. After analyzing their data, students should complete the claim evidence reasoning found on the second part of measuring matter. In the Evaluate portion of this lesson, students will choose a card from their States of Matter cards found in Lesson 1, and they'll use the Physical Properties of Matter handout in their student journal to discuss the properties of matter that they see in that card. By the end of this lesson, students have observed and measured different physical properties of matter. They're going to use the properties of matter discussed in this lesson as they think about the meal they're going to describe in their design challenge.